That is glamorous 40 seconds, there are Starbucks features and parts in the air.
Further down 103rd Street, as students walk to school, they often pass the location of Norman Rockwell's birthplace. Students worked with the Norman Rockwell Museum to fundraise for the installation of a plaque erected in June 2018.
This youth hostel, located next to the school, is a great place to stay, and it's also our location for our prom.
Westside High School is in the middle of the Douglas Project, named after Frederick Douglass, a runaway slave who became free and ultimately became a statesman in the United States. Unfortunately, the conditions of many housing projects around the city are not ideal. Some might even describe them as inhumane.
Our school was named after Ed Burns, the first principal of Westside High School. Kids loved him. He always did whatever he could in order to help students. Unfortunately, he died when I was in school.
Students are greeted by security when they enter the school. Mothers are able to drop off their children at the Life Center, a daycare for teen moms. Our students are only here for 2 to 3 years. Some kids come because they are being bullied or may have had health or family problems, and some come to this school because other family members attended.
Our school is a place where the students' well-being comes first and academics are just extra.
The end of our video number 1. We showed you outside.
You can close it.
Thank you all so much. Okay, we're going back into our meeting. I will give the chair's report. I wanted to report that for the Youth Education and Libraries Committee, Holly has stepped down, unfortunately, due to a ruling from the board. Steve Brown will co-chair now with Blanche. The Conflict of Interest Board has agreed to do a training for us. We're hoping that it will be the night of March 19th, either just before or just after the steering committee. Wednesday, March 20th, City Planning is offering a land use training down at City Planning Office. And there will be soon announced a meeting of the task force on the charter revision, and hopefully somebody from the commission will be come to that meeting. So we're now going to hear from public speakers. The first one is Marjorie Cohn, followed by Lynn Armstrong.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Cohen. I'm here just to tell you a little bit about the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group. The group's been around since 2000. Started at Park West Village with people who were interested in finding out more about their history. Now, I don't know, I guess we would say, what do we call Bloomingdale? We sort of go all the way down to 72nd Street up to like 116th, but we've had programs on areas that are beyond that. What I wanted to do is we sponsor talks, we sponsor free programs. We have wonderful walks of the Upper West Side led by Jim Mappin, who's amazing. And it was because I took a walk with him once. It was so fantastic that it got me interested in the whole thing about our neighborhood history and New York history in general. So I just wanted to tell you about what's coming attractions, okay? There's a flyer outside about our next program, March 21st. You remember Claremont Writing Academy, right? Judith Martin, who was the general manager for 20 plus years, I think it is going to talk about it's kind of Bloomingdale on horseback. It's the equestrian history of the neighborhood. Oh, okay. Well, we have programs outside. We have coming attraction flyers, so please help yourself and come. Thank you.
I just want to remind people to try and keep your remarks to a minute.
I'm Wayne Armstrong with an update on the last decade, so to speak, of which many of you know the Jewish on the. Well, I want to start with some good news. The archives of the Park West Justice Project, which is the proposed project which has been on 97th Street for a nursing home, which the Park West Justice Project, the working group in Park West Village has opposed. And the community board has been both instructive and constructive in this long process. Those archives are going to the Tenement Library at NYU. This is an ongoing project, so I just wanted you to know that part of your history will be. Second thing, the zoning case, which is about open space and who gets this. The Department of City Planning says that on a zoning line, the open space should be open to all residents. The developers of this project want to be the allocators. Okay, I'll just finish a couple of paragraphs. In any case, we won the case in the New York courts. It's being appealed by the developers, and it's going to Albany to Court of Appeals. Probably won't get dealt with for a couple of months, so we'll be back.
Our next speaker is Joseph McGrun, followed by Zachary Campbell.
I'm sorry if mine will be closer to 90 seconds. Hi everyone, my name is Joseph McGrone. I'm a resident and parent in District 3 and Community Board 7 living on 89th and Broadway. Since moving here from Harlem, I've attended a number of CB7 meetings and a few YEL meetings. This is my 18th year as a middle school educator. About 14 years ago, I started KIPP Infinity Middle School, a public charter school on 133rd and Broadway. I've been at KIPP for 15 years, long enough to see kids graduate from amazing colleges and long enough to see them come back and teach at the school that I started. When I moved to District 3, I began to learn more about the district, both as someone who's very into middle school education and as someone who has a 4.5-year-old that's about to enter kindergarten. I learned that there are people both in and out of this room who are working really hard to close the achievement gap between Black and Latinx kids and white and Asian counterparts, and who care deeply about integrating our schools. I come to you as one of those people. Over the past 9 months, I've had conversations with over 200 families in the district and have heard the same theme time and time again. Families want a school that has both high quality academics and reflects the rich diversity of the city and our district. Promise 4 sentences. Over 3 months ago, I applied to open a public charter school that will provide families with a middle school option that families currently don't have, one that is academically rigorous, intentionally integrated, and unscreened. Our charter was approved yesterday, and while many families are excited, there is some opposition. I'm here with no ask other than to introduce myself to you if I haven't heard from you already, and feel free to follow up with me afterwards. Thank you, and sorry for going over.
I hope people will respect our 1 minute, because that would get more people to speak if we get over the that will be followed by all.
So 1 minute. Good evening, everyone. My name is Zach Campbell. I'm the community liaison for the Richard Gilder Center for Science, Education, and Innovation. Good evening. My name is Zach Campbell. I'm the community liaison for the Richard Gilder Center for Science, Education, and Innovation at the American Museum of Natural History. I'm here tonight to provide you with an update on recent developments on the Gilder Center project. Since last month, external work on the site has resumed. Tree removal is complete, as is topsoil removal and the installation of ground protections. Those are the crushed stone and the mats that create a stable, workable construction area. In the coming weeks, work will begin on the removal of interior building components inside the Weston building and 2 adjacent buildings that formerly housed the Theology Department. Officially has been completed. We anticipate that site preparation activities may be complete by mid-March and that interior removals will begin the following week. We'll continue to keep the community board apprised of the project with regular updates, and the community at large informed of upcoming construction activities via e-blasts to our Gilder subscriber list and our website. Our construction task force will be meeting next week, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
How long is the sidewalk shed gonna last? It's about 100 or so feet from the actual construction. Is that needed on Columbus Avenue?
So yes, the sidewalk shed delineates the area where the actual construction activities will be taking place behind, and that will be there for the duration of the project. The project is 36 months from basically the beginning of the call.
My name is Olive Freud, President of the Committee for Environmentally Sound Development, very interested in quality of life, and we've had been here multiple times. I want to talk about voids. New York City Planning Commission recently proposed to close the mechanical void loophole by restricting them. That proposal is inadequate. It does not affect the total height of the building. It simply restricts the height of very tall voids. The proposed text allows multiple smaller mechanical voids that could prove to be as onerous, if not more so, than one tall void. It is this committee's contention that as in current buildings, new ones should continue to house their mechanics in the basement. There's no necessity for a void to be housed high up. We are not in a low-lying area. The only reason the mechanics were never counted against the FAR, the opposed square footage allowed in the past, was that they were in the basement. The whole void scenario was concocted by developers to add height and further enrich themselves. To ameliorate this problem of uncontrolled height, we must return to an uncodified formula for determining the height. The number of stories times 10. For example, Lincoln Towers is 30 stories and is 300 feet. For those of us who live here in this dense urban area, we demand that a livable city with sky and sun. It is not good urban planning to cast many people in shadows so that a few wealthy ones can bask in an inordinately high towers. Thank you, and you'll be hearing from us again.
Next are two board members who are actually going to take just less than 60 seconds.
I just want to say, Hi, everybody. Barbara Adler, who is the Executive Director of the Columbus Avenue Business Improvement District, cannot be here tonight, so she asked me to make an announcement about this year's 12th annual Taste of the Upper West Side, which will be honoring the West Side Campaign Against Hunger. It is a 501c3. We have postcards there. Anybody who signs up, who buys a ticket now, will get 15% off. I have postcards on the table back there. There are postcards here. I think I did this in 45 seconds. Oh, wait, sorry. May 7th, Friday, May 17th, and Saturday, May 18th.
Want to tell you about free, that's it, free homework help for children grades K to 5, kindergarten to 5, at St. Michael's. Every Monday evening from 6 to 7, 1 hour, no cost. I will put some of these out on the table outside if you're interested, or come see me.
April, do you want to do the borough president? So, yeah. All right, good evening, y'all. Is that good? All right, perfect. I'm April Adams with the Manhattan Borough President's Office. I'm going to give a quick update. I'll talk a little briefly about the voids text amendment. I know that's the first time on the agenda. I did just want to mention that the Department of City Planning did come out to the Borough President's Office last month and held a public hearing
And we're excited that DCP is taking on this issue, and we're excited to see where it goes. Of course, there are some reservations, some hesitations with everything in the process, but the borough president, we will be coming out with a report this Friday with our recommendations on it. But I did just want to say, congratulations to everyone that has worked tirelessly and passionately on this issue in CB7. We appreciate it. All right, so some updates. So reminders, so March 7th is the deadline to submit individual testimony regarding the mechanical voids text amendment. You can submit those directly to DCP or email me. March 7th is also the deadline to submit comments regarding the city's budget. If you would like to submit comments, please email budget@manhattanbp.nyc.gov. We recently announced that we have an accessibility task force. This is coming on the heels of the recent accessibility report that we just released, and we will be handling outstanding transportation issues, urban design, accessibility issues, and a load of others. So that will be meeting monthly soon. Congestion pricing, another hot topic. We will be meeting on March 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be holding a congestion pricing forum. The location is to be determined, but we believe it'll probably be at Cooper Union. And if you're interested in attending, please reach out to me and let me know, and I'll give you further info on that. We also have a job census fair. If you're interested in working with the upcoming census for 2020, we're holding that fair from 6 to 8 p.m. This Thursday, actually, at the Northern Manhattan office, and that is on West 125th Street. So we'd love to see you guys there. March 21st, we are also holding a housing clinic from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Northern Manhattan office, where you can learn anything about obtaining repairs, succession rights, eviction proceedings, legal, rental fees, and much more. And lastly, we will be holding a Women's History Month celebration, and we'll actually be focusing on women in prison, and we'll be honoring some of the advocates for women in prison and honoring their upcoming work as well. And that will be March 20th at Give Me Dance at 280 Broadway, near our offices from 6 to 8 p.m. Do you have any questions? Okay. Oh.
Just repeat the congestion pricing meeting date,
The
please.
congestion pricing meeting date is March 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. Location to be determined. Possible.
Get out of the congestion pricing areas.
Next will be Sada Santos and Senator Serrano's office, followed by Cato Terry from Assemblymember Rose Controls.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me, as always. Senator Serrano doesn't really have any events coming up this month, so I do want to just start out by saying we will be having our constituent hours. Next offsite constituent hours are happening tomorrow, Wednesday, at Johnson Club 76 Senior Center from 11 to 2 p.m. Every week, we do visit the Upper West Side. We only have a small part of the district here, but we always make sure to come out to St. Agnes Library and to senior centers in the district. I think we actually come to Phelps House for this area. And regarding the residential tower mechanical voids, we're very happy to be signed on to this letter from Council Member Kalos, and looking forward to the discussion on this evening. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I'm from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. We have two big events coming up this Friday. We're hosting a scree-dree homeowners exemption clinic with Department of Finance in our district office, so please call and RSVP for that. On April 4th, we'll be having a West Side Town Hall meeting with Comptroller Scott Stringer and the Assembly member at John Jay College, and so we invite all of you to come with your questions, concerns, and it should be a lively evening, so we're looking forward. It is at 6:30. And there's a flyer out there as well. And in terms of legislation, the Assembly member's bill on getting free menstrual products in charter schools passed this past week. They are already provided for free in regular traditional public schools, and so this broadens it to charter schools as well. And the Assembly member has a bill on increasing increasing how mechanical voids are counted towards the FAR at the state level. So it's a little more expansive, and I don't know the exact numbers, but you can call our office to get those exact numbers. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Asher Been from Senator Melvin's office, followed by Julie from Councilmember Rosenthal's office.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here. I'll try and keep this as brief as I can. Senator Wyman and the rest of the state Senate had a pretty busy month. Just yesterday, the Senate passed Senator Brad Boyleman's bill regarding toy and imitation guns. This bill would require that imitation weapons be made entirely brightly colored or transparent or clear, just so that they're clearly identifiable, so as to avoid fatal accidents resulting from mistaking toy guns from real ones. It's actually a very real problem in New York State. Since 1994, there have been at least 63 shootings in the state because of toy or imitation guns, and police say it's virtually impossible to train officers to identify fake guns from a distance, so this bill would change all that. Along the lines of gun reform, yesterday, the state Senate also passed a bill requiring safe storage of firearms in homes to prevent their access for children and other unauthorized persons. I also want to stress as regards to the Child Victims Act, the 1-year look-back window, which a lot of people have been hearing about, that begins on August 14th. Our office is beginning discussions with community groups right now as to outreach. I know that's an important issue, and we're aware of that, so I'll be back here to share specifics pertaining to that. And finally, I want to remind folks that with tax season approaching, the New York Public Library is hosting a wide variety of free tax assistance workshops throughout the next several weeks. Coming up at the Riverside Branch on Amsterdam Avenue between 65th and 66th. They will have their sessions on Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. free of charge. And there's more information about that in our board report. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Rosenthal just walked in. Perfect timing.
Hey everyone, good to see you. It's been a while. I hear a lot, you guys are doing lots of good stuff. I was actually at the Land Use Committee meeting when you're doing this amazing work on the void space. Don't let Ben Kalos from the east side know this, but your resolution was by far the most detailed and thorough and smart and
I agree.
So thank you guys for all your effort. You know, I really just want to talk about one main thing, let you guys get on with it. Corey Johnson today was the first adult in the room in a while. He announced a new plan for the MTA where the city would take it over completely. The city would be able to float bonds to pay for upkeep and new capital. The city would be responsible for making sure the trains run on time, and the city would be responsible for making sure that the books are balanced and that we're not spending wildly on procurement where traditionally the MTA has just been shoveling money in the money pit. So I'm just so proud to be working for him. I think he is the first person who set forth a comprehensive, smart plan. I really think it's worth spending a little bit of time to go onto the city council website and look at the, I don't know, I hear it's a 100-page plan, but let's go. And he also announced the bat, right? Okay, because this was something I thought we were just joking about, but yeah, I really like it. The Big Apple Transit, right? I love that. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that the city moves forward with this plan. If you have thoughts about it, let me know. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. And I guess I do just have to mention one other thing. On March, I'm pretty sure 19th, I'm looking around Julian, the 19th, for our big congestion pricing meeting. We're having a big congestion pricing forum because now, what? Did we announce it already? Oh, there is. Oh, fascinating. So the electeds are going to try to get their act together. But if we don't, I had always made a promise to this community that before I move forward with anything on congestion pricing, once we got some details, I wanted to hear from the community. So we have a couple of experts coming to talk about what's in the plan, and I need your feedback. The cutoff is going to be right here in our district, right at 61st Street. And on the FDR, they're going to be giving people a pass. That's the current plan, where there will be no tolling on the FDR, but there will on the West Side Highway. That might relieve traffic on the west side, I don't know. But I really need to hear from you because I'm going to be asked to vote on something, and I want feedback from you. Not right now. Yeah. I thought, but I'm the council member, so I'm the last to know. So keep an eye on my website, helenrosenthal.com. I had thought it was March 19th, but if we know by the end of this, I will definitely make sure Roberta announces it. Thank you all. Does anyone have any questions? Quick, short, share your dinner, Jay. Good to see you.
A quick question on the Department of City Planning proposal. I quickly read through the resolution. I agree.
Can't hear you.
Louder.
Quickly read through the, oh, sorry.
The resolution seems very comprehensive and well thought out. And I have a question, but maybe simplistic. Notwithstanding the zoning resolution, zoning lot mergers, FAR, and restrictions on boards, has anyone in the city council ever proposed, notwithstanding those things, an absolute height restriction, period?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the city council voted, this city council voted last term to do mandatory inclusionary housing with upzones. And that was some deal that was worked out between the city council and the mayor, which means that city planning has its marching orders. Do you guys, is anyone following, or should Jay and I talk about this afterwards? Okay, it's a good idea. I agree. We should be downzoning on the Upper West Side. I'm with you 100%. Okay, bye. Thank you all.
So now we have Derek from Councilmember Levina's office, followed by Alex from Assemblymember Gottfried's office.
Hi, everybody. I'll be brief. First, just want to let everybody know that Councilmember Levine is very happy that the Office of Hate Crime Prevention has now come to fruition. So we're looking forward to seeing how everything will go forward. And I also wanted to let people know that the council member is looking to push for residential parking permits. We know that there's a good amount of conversation on this, and we want to hear everybody's thoughts. We have a link on the website to reach out to us. Also, give our office a call, have meetings as well. We would love to hear everybody's input. And there's also a petition on there, should you want to sign on and support. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Alec, followed by Hannah from Congressman Downey's office.
Good evening, everyone. Alec from Congressman Downey's office. In addition to what everyone else has said about the annual awards and calls, the Assembly member actually hosted a Represent New York City episode that's going to air this Sunday. Councilmember Kalos is a guest on it. It's going to air this Sunday, March 10th at 7 p.m. If you can't catch it this Sunday, it's going to re-air Wednesday, March 13th at 9 p.m. New York Health Act was reintroduced last month. It passed the Assembly Health Committee. It is now before the Assembly Codes Committee, so be sure to keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Hey everyone, sorry to have my back to you. Our office has been busy. So Congressman Nadler on Monday requested documents from about 80 individuals and organizations. 81, excuse me. Excuse me. And I will bring back my watch to him in DC. But the probes are focusing, it's basically just oversight. The three areas that he's looking into is the obstruction of justice, public corruption, and abuses of power. So as we go through the process, we'll come back and give updates. We also are celebrating the passage of HR 8 and HR 112 in the House, which is the first gun control legislation that's been passed in about 20 years, a little more than that. And this closed some loopholes around background checks. It was a bipartisan bill. We'll see what happens in the Senate, but we're really pleased that it passed in the House. We're also continuing to understand the separated families issue. We are holding more hearings. We're holding the administration accountable, so we will be in touch about that. The last thing I want to mention is the Victims Compensation Fund. You've been seeing it in the news a bit. So they've just recently unfortunately slashed the awards. The VCF was running out of funds. The congressman with others, a bipartisan effort in the House and the Senate, I believe, are reauthorizing the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund, so that would be funded until 2090. So I'll let you know when it gets introduced in our committee and then in the House. And I will keep everyone posted. If you have any federal questions, come find me. Yep.
We have one more public speaker, but before that person speaks, I just want to remind everybody that a group of us went to the Conflict of Interest Board training session that the borough president gave. And they reminded us that if you're voting and you're not eligible to vote, before the vote is called, if you speak during the session, before you speak, you have to explain why you're not eligible to vote. If you have not spoken and you're not eligible to vote, before the vote is taken, you raise your hand and explain that you're not eligible to vote for the reason that you're not eligible to vote. And if you have any questions about it, we can help you on that one. Our last speaker is Jill Denser from the West Side Naturalists.
I'm just making an announcement because I've been very concerned all over the city at the moment. We're in the process of changing our analog meters, electric and gas, to smart meters. And I've just been very concerned that there has been almost no public discussion of this. I haven't found any leadership from New York Times and programs, any places. And many people just simply don't know what's going on. They receive a notice from Con Edison in very small letters that that this is going to happen, but it sounds like an upgrade, and people don't understand that it's a whole new technology, and it should be something that people really understand what's going on and decide if they want to do it. They do have an option to opt out of this, but it's very tricky to go through the process. So I'm going to send some information to the community board with details about this so that people can at least begin to think about it and decide if it's a good one. Okay.
We're now going to go into our business session, and our first business is land use.
Okay, Seema, Reedy, and I sort of high-five every 15 minutes because this hasn't been the longest meeting minutes ever. And we actually cut it down to 8 from 21. So that tells you the depth of the discussion we've had. I want to start off by saying that because of the complicated, I should say because of the ramifications of what the void text implies, we broke it down into from A to I of the different issues. So one of the concerns that we wanted to air is to make sure we studied every aspect of every piece, but we're not voting on A through I because we would be here till midnight. We're voting on the resolution as a whole. So that's the rules for this evening. Please read through it, and if you have questions, by all means, ask. But I want to start off right now because we have a few comments from the public, and I believe Ben Kalos. Would you like to say a few words, please?
Sure. Thank you. Audience or board, who do I address?
Everyone.
Okay. I will try to do this. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. First, thank you to CB7 Chair Roberta Semmer for your leadership, for having me. Thank you to all the board members for doing this volunteer. They do not get paid. They're public servant. Can we give them a quick round of applause for all the great work that they do? And for those in the audience, this is some of the most attendance I've seen at a community board. Can the community board give the audience an applause for being involved in their local democracy? Councilmember Ben Kalos, I represent the East Side. I came across town to read you my 38-page newsletter. Seriously though, if you don't have a newsletter and a handout, we'll be tested on it. If you raise your hand to shop for my office, we'll give it to you. I'm here to speak in favor of this community board's resolution in support of the residential mechanical voids text amendment. Mechanical voids are something that the east side and the west side can actually agree on. They are bad, and it is a citywide problem. As Councilmember Rosenthal already shared, your land use committee chairs, Paige Cowley and Seema Riddy, you actually had the CB5 was best, then it was CB6, and then it was you. This is the most detailed. It really covers a lot of the points. I encourage passage of all 9 points. I also want to give huge shout outs to Assemblymember Dick Godfrey, who's been working on this since the start, Danny O'Donnell, Senator Serrano. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal has a bill in Albany that is important. It puts pressure on the city to do the right thing. And in a perfect world, we can get both done. And then I want to thank your local council member, Helen Rosenthal, who is co-chair of the Manhattan delegation. She's really been fighting alongside on this issue for quite some time, and she does deserve a round of applause. So I want to direct everyone's attention to the handout. There is a handout. If you do not have it, please raise your hand. Sushant will hand it to you. The important part is to look on the back of the handout. What you will see in light blue is the part of the city that has height protections. Most of the city has height protections. It is either a fixed height protection or something called the sky exposure plane. You can see a diagram of the sky exposure plane on the first page. The areas in red are areas which you can put up something called a tower or a tower on base. Those are the places that are vulnerable to voids. Those are the places that we are focused on in terms of residential areas. As you can see, the Upper West Side had Gail Brewer as the council member and now the borough president, and you have a lot of protections. There are a handful of places that are not. The area that is in yellow is going to be excluded from the current plan. This has made CB5 very upset. That is where Billionaires Row is. We're only touching some of Billionaires Row. We are not touching the financial district either. That is what city planning is coming back for in June and July, and we hope that in between then and now you will also hold a hearing on that, because Columbus Circle is not necessarily covered, which you touched. I think that this is a good first stop. We did ask for a 210-foot height cap. As Jay asked, city planning said absolutely not. A different organization, Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District, have proposed 210. A different organization named Civitas said, how about 400 feet? Community Board 8 said over our dead bodies. I agreed with them, and city planning still said no. So then Friends took, I gave member items to Friends, which is funding for my office. They came back with saying, and with a gentleman named George James, and he said, why don't we just close the loopholes? And it was a lot of things you're dealing with at 200 Amsterdam, but likely focused on these voids that were appearing in the Vignoli building, starting with 432 Park. Now you can see the Barbell building, and now your building at West 66th Street. So if we do nothing, if you vote this down, then 66th Street moves forward, 62nd Street moves forward, and another 10 or 20 buildings go up. To be clear, this will not stop tall buildings. What this stops is that when a building is supposed to be 20 stories or 30 stories and 200 feet or 300 feet, instead of it having 150 feet of nothing inside just to give views to billionaires, they would still have to be the 2 or 3 or 400 feet. You just don't get an 200-foot or 300-foot building that's all of a sudden becomes 700 or 800 feet tall. It was cool in the Jetsons, but the Jetsons actually followed Le Corbusier, and there was more space between the buildings. We can get into that. I've gone on too long. I was told to be very short and concise. I hope I have been. Can answer any quick questions, and I'd be happy to turn it over to the real expert, Paige, and her co-chair. Oh, last piece. Landmark West is the key partner with Friends. If you live on the west side and you care about this, I didn't come up with this. I'm not an expert. I'm not an architect. Pages. You can give money to Landmark West, and they will spend it on these sorts of projects so that we can get this done with the city. This isn't enough. We need more, and Landmark West will need your support to get it done.
Wow, thank you very much. And full disclosure, sorry? Yes. Full disclosure, I'm also the chair of Landmark West, so I just put that out there. I've been studying this with our committee, and I should also honor Richard Ash, who has done an amazing job in doing the second part we're voting on tonight, which is a moratorium to go to city council, and Ethel Sheffer, who educated me, I think, starting 14 years ago when I joined the community board, and has been instrumental in a lot of the details that go into these resolutions. And Seema Reedy, who is our newbie, who brings enormous experience, as well as Louisa, who actually wrote the zoning handbook, the little orange booklet. And then I could go on to Shelley and all the architects, by the way, we have a block here. All the architects on the committee sit on one side. So just wanted to share that this is not the effort of one person or one community, it's the whole city. So tonight we have a few comments. We'll take these first because they may inform any questions that our committee has. So the first one is Rabbi Lisa Gelber.
Remind them they have 1 minute.
1 minute, I'm told.
57 seconds. Good evening. I'm Rabbi Lisa Gelber. I'm a 16-year Upper West Side resident. I am a mother raising my daughter in the multi-generational egalitarian synagogue congregation Habonim here on the Upper West Side, where I am the spiritual leader. Habonim's story is one of love and one of perseverance. It was founded by German Jewish refugees 80 years ago. She is a haven for those who can imagine a future free to practice their faith as part of a larger community for freedoms. Our current space is not going to meet our long-term needs as we grow and expand our community of all ages. Our permanent home is supposed to be at 50 West 66. It will be there, and we will enrich our synagogue and the surrounding community. This building under construction is as of right. An enormous amount of design and construction work has already been done. Halting progress is going to challenge the survival of our community. So on behalf of the Habonim family, and on behalf of my family, I ask you please to help us save our home, to move the project forward. You can help us fulfill the lesson of the Talmudic rabbis. Just as our ancestors have planted for us, so too are we planting for future generations. Thank you.
I'm going to call two names, Elaine Whitcock, followed by Ellen Mendel.
If you could line up here so we can.
I don't know which way to face. I'm Elaine Whitcock. I live in CB7. I was president of Habonim when we began searching for a new home 7 years ago. We were in dire financial straits in a crumbling building that we had outgrown and was draining our resources. We're not involved with the development of 50 West 66th Street, but our future depends upon its continued construction, since we own a condo unit there that will house our future synagogue. I asked the board to help save our synagogue by not using the proposed Board amendment to stop construction of 50 West 66. We cannot grow in our rental space. We are turning away nursery school families who are the lifeblood of our synagogue, and our foreign bar mitzvahs must be held in a separate venue, dividing our members during these community celebrations. We've invested 7 years and significant resources in our dream for a permanent home. And if this project is stopped, we have nowhere to go. Using this amendment to stop construction of 50 West 66th Street now puts the future of our synagogue at risk. We take no position on the Floyd Amendment, but it would be unfair to apply a new rule like this to an as-of-right project like 50 West 66th Street, where an enormous amount of design and construction work has been done. Please help us save our synagogue.
Followed by Michael Harvey.
Okay.
Michael, can
Quickly.
you come up?
My name is Ellen Mendel, and I live in Community Board 7. I've been a member of Congregation Habonim for 79 years, and I've lived on the Upper West Side in this area for that amount of time. Our congregation, as you heard, was founded by Jewish refugees from Germany, including my family, in 1939, exactly 1 year after the Nazis had sent rioters into the streets to arrest thousands of Jews, loot stores, and burn synagogues all over Germany. When I was 4 years old, we narrowly escaped Germany and came to America. The founders of Habonim sacrificed and overcame major obstacles to reestablish their lives in New York and freedom. We are continuing development and commitment of these founders. But today, our hopes and dreams for the future may be dashed because of last-minute governmental roadblocks on 50 West 66th Street project. If this project does not proceed, we risk putting our very existence in serious jeopardy. Please tell the city that there is an important religious institution in your district that is counting on 50 West 66th Street being constructed now for its future home. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Harwain. I live in CB7. I'm also a member of Congregation Habonim. At February's Land Use Committee meeting, it was suggested that the developer revert to his 2015 plans for a 25-story building on part of the 50 West 66th Street site. We've been following this very closely. I just want to share some facts to clear up the misconception. The developer originally owned a smaller piece of land on West 66th Street. They filed plans for a smaller building on that land in 2015. In November 2017, the developer acquired the adjacent Guild for the Blind building on 65th Street, doubling the size of the land. Then in July 2018, after 9 months of review, the DOB approved the zoning and foundation permits for a larger building on this larger site. An enormous amount of design and construction work has been done for this larger building, which is as of right. Wishing for a smaller building that will never be built is not a solution for Habonim. That will put Habonim's existence in jeopardy. Please help us move this project forward by telling the city to follow its existing rules so work can continue on 50 West 66th Street and we can build our new home. Thank you for your consideration as we work to save our synagogue.
Hi, board. My name is Deborah Carlstein. I'm an Upper West Side resident since 1995. I've raised 3 children here on the Upper West Side. You're 4 of your constituents. I'm also a member of the Board of Trustees of Congregation Habonim, so I speak on behalf of hundreds of Upper West Side families who are also your constituents. And we ask you to protect all of your constituents here on the Upper West Side. You've heard that Habonim is intended to occupy a condo unit at the base of 50 West 66th Street. We'll have the ground floor, part of the basement, and the entire 65th Street frontage. It will be beautiful. It's our home. We have relied to our detriment on the city's prior approvals. We have spent money, time on our plans for our architecture and engineering. If this building doesn't go forward, not only have we lost our investment, but we have nowhere to go. We have no place else on the Upper West Side. We have done a survey. There is not similar space for us. Please understand that we have a limited radius. We have community members who are elderly and not very mobile. We have community members that are Sabbath observers, and they will not take public transportation on the Jewish Sabbath on Saturday. So we've got nowhere to go if we don't have this building, and we ask you to look out for all of your constituents. Please protect our synagogue.
Hi, my name is Rich Werner. I've lived in Community Board 7 for 35 years. I've been a member of Congregation Habonim for almost 20 years, and I'm currently its president. I too ask the board to help save our synagogue by not using the proposed void amendment to stop construction of 50 West 66th Street. We've put significant resources into completing plans for our new home. Here are some of the positive additions Habonim will provide for our hundreds of congregants and the entire Upper West Side community. A beautiful new synagogue with a large sanctuary and smaller chapel. A school with 7 new classrooms to educate hundreds of preschool and school-aged children in their neighborhood, as well as space for a variety of adult education programs. And a large programming and event space that will benefit the entire Upper West Side community. Please help us move this project forward by urging the city to follow its existing rules so work can continue and we can build our new home. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone from Congregation Habonim to please stand up and support our synagogue.
Hey there. I think this resolution as proposed is a missed opportunity for the Upper West Side. These voids are wasteful and they don't provide any benefit to the community, but this amendment doesn't do anything to provide benefits to the neighborhood either. Empty mechanical floors don't provide any benefit to the community, but they also don't pay anything in rent to developers. So why do they build them? They want to provide better use of billionaires, but they use empty mechanical floors to do so because they don't count against floor area ratio, while other uses, like affordable housing, do. Developers are building these floors and keeping them empty instead of filling them with rent-paying affordable housing because one counts against FAR and the other doesn't. Developers design their buildings around the FAR regulations. This resolution changes the definition of FAR to discourage developer behavior that does not benefit the community. My question for the board is, while we are changing the definition of FAR, why aren't we changing it in a way that encourages them to build affordable housing instead of empty mechanical floors? The proposal as written feels good because it eliminates the loopholes that developers have been taking advantage of, but does nothing to actually provide benefits to the community, and that seems like a huge missed opportunity. Thanks.
I'm Ellen Martin from Save Central Park NYC. We're a group that is passionate about saving the light and air in Central Park. We have been working on this issue of the shades of the park for several years, trying to get the city to do something about it. We are not totally satisfied with what the city has proposed, but we think it's a good start. And time is not on our side. We feel we need to move now. We support the city's proposal with a couple of suggestions. One, that it says that there can be a 25-foot void every 75 feet. We feel that should be 12 feet void only every 200 feet, and that should adequately protect the developers, and they can use anything else they need for FAR. I will also say that my son was bar mitzvahed at Temple Habonim, and I live very close to it, 2 buildings away. I would say that I followed this deal when it was made, and that Temple Habonim got around $20 million in exchange for letting them build a 26-story building. They do not have a building permit to build a 775-foot building. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Giordano. I'm president of the 64th through 67th Streets Block Association. I wanted to thank the community board for your hard work and leadership on this issue, particularly Sheriff Seymour and the land use committee. With regard to our neighborhood, which is facing a building with proposed 205 feet of void space, one which is 161 feet tall, we've got necessary to remind that just 26 years ago, city planning went through a full process to limit the height in the neighborhood, and here we are again, trying to defend the zoning in our neighborhood. We believe that a 25-foot void every 75 feet does nothing to create housing for city's growth, density to solve housing affordability, neighborhood amenities to support infrastructure and quality of life, nor do we believe it's the missing tool for architects to express themselves more creatively. Further, it's a step backward from what this community worked hard to establish with the Lincoln Square Special District zoning resolution. We think the work here has been great. We'd like you to push harder on the limitations. We request you consider limiting mechanical space to 12 feet, lengthening the space between the voids to 200 feet, and to include mixed-use space. Thank you so much.
Back to the chair. First, I'd like to address the congregation Habanim. As one of the speakers said, this deal for Excal has been in the making a long time. Your original synagogue was sold at, I believe, a very good fair market price, and then time has marched on. And the neighborhood is looking not to displace any religious institution for sure, but we're looking at safeguarding the future of the city of New York. This text amendment is not targeted at any one site or any one developer. If you think that's the case, you're wrong. We are trying to work within a framework with city planning to come up with a formula that allows a certain amount of growth, but prevents the destruction of our neighborhoods, our light, air, environment, wind tunnels. We've studied the gambit. So please understand that this text amendment, and Rabbi, I'm sympathetic because I work on historic churches myself. And it's not, this isn't about your synagogue. This is about our city, our community, our neighborhoods, our historic landmarks. And that's what we have to keep the focus on. And we have to work together, which is why Ben Kalos and Helen Rosenthal and Linda have gone all the way up to the state level to try to put some pressure on controlling a planned growth. We don't have a plan for New York City, and that's what this is all about. Now I'm going to turn this over to questions from our community board first to ask, and then I'm just going to pass the mic because we seem to only have one. We're just going to go around the table, and I'm going to start with Peter.
I don't exactly have a question, but I would like to address my remarks to the congregation Habanim. I was bar mitzvah in 1948 by Rabbi Hahn and Cantor Hirsch. My three sons all were bar mitzvah also at Congregation Habanim on 66th Street. I'm an architect. I'm a resident of the Upper West Side for 50 years, and I believe very much in Congregation Habanim and in the other synagogues of the Upper West Side. But as Paige mentioned, this is an issue far bigger. That's a pun in a way, but it affects all of us on the West Side. And I'm sure that Congregation Habanim will survive in a building somewhat smaller, but still a very big building. And I would just urge the congregation to look on the bright side. The building is going to get built. It may not go up to 700 feet, but it will still be a significant building. Thank you.
I forgot the annex to my left, so we're starting with the community members here.
Thanks.
A question and a comment. This resolution would apply to this building. It's not purely prospective, in other words?
This would apply to all citywide buildings that
Even-
share the same characteristics as this building.
Even if the building's already begun construction? It's not clear to me.
It's because
Well, you should make it clear in the resolution then. Does
it will apply to this building.
Okay, that's
Yes.
clear. Okay.
That's the short answer.
Okay,
Yes.
assuming it applies to this building, I think it's very unfair if a building is built according to current law and in the middle of construction to try to change the rules on that. I just want to be 100% clear. I'm totally against these voids. I think they're wrong, but it should be changed prospectively. I walk by that plot every day. Yeah, they've already started digging for the building, and I think to change the rules.
They have a permit for that building.
Excuse me?
They don't have a
permit
permit
they have
for
is for
the
a 25-story
700.
building.
Can we hear you?
I just want to make one point. I'm not advocating for the building or against the building. All I'm saying is, if If they're building in accordance with the rules as they exist now, they should be able to go ahead. I don't think they should be affected by what we do here tonight.
Do you want to explain it?
I'm speechless here because the issue is that they don't have a permit for a 775-foot building. They have a permit for a 26-story building, I believe. And the issue is that this isn't the only building that has what they call vested rights in foundations. Many of them do. It's the way that they can get a permit quickly for foundations only. It's at the developer's risk that they take it further. So as far as the city is concerned, and that's why the DOB pulled up sharply and issued, while challenges were going to the Board of Standards and Appeals, realized there were other issues beyond just the void, but the life safety of a fireman running up 18 floors and then having to go another floor, which happens to be 161 feet, before they can even start to rescue people out of the building. So it's not just the logic of, it's not just simply saying, NIMBY, I don't want a super tall. It's the question of, how do you design a super tall and make it fair? And so this building will get caught.
Okay, I just want to be clear, I'm against the void. I just don't think the rules should be changed on the mid.
Well, we have to start somewhere, so you can vote accordingly. All right, I need to let everybody else know.
There are several important points. I start with the respect and concern that I feel for Havonim, as I think everyone in the room feels. I wasn't a member of Havonim, but actually when I was a kid, Havonim was part of another neighborhood. However, the outcry, which I'm sympathetic to, of the members here, as if this community board is systematically doing something to hurt Havonim, is a terrible and unfortunate distortion and unfair and actually incorrect. Now, the text amendment, which was initiated by the Department of City Planning, is a limited, pointed, focused revision to the zoning resolution about voids and the way they are counted. The city planning initiated that in part because of community concerns and other concerns about the way buildings could get to be very tall by the use of voids. Okay, that's what this is about. This other community boards and this one have in fact supported the action of city planning to change, to revise the unfortunate glitch in the zoning text and the enormous ingenuity and great wonder of technology in architecture that permits developers and architects to make tall buildings now, very tall, by a different technology, namely through a void where the mechanical space exists. And that's what this text amendment is about. What's important about what Community Board 7 has done, and I want to commend personally and as a board member, Paige, Seema, and above all, Richard Ash, who has done so much to make this resolution so clear and so important in the city, even as other community boards are doing it. My last point is for those who spoke, like the gentleman who spoke about why aren't we helping and pushing affordable housing and so on. This board has always done it, but also the reason this resolution is particularly good, and it is not there to hurt Havonim, and I would venture to say will not hurt
Habonim is because in the resolution, this board commends what city planning did, but says there's much more that it has to do. And it describes it in detail to deal with the lack of regulation, the fact that these buildings do not go through Mueller, so on and so forth. So it's all worth supporting. The really last factual point, if anyone from Habonim wishes to respond to it, you don't have to, but it might be helpful, is that what you don't have to tell us about your deal with the developer, but you certainly have made the deal with the developer on the site that exists now, and I would venture to say, believe me, if I'm wrong, please correct me immediately, that that deal was made in 2014, or even before, when the 25-story building, or whatever was announced. So my question would be, if you have a deal, it's a deal. And and can you not have your space, which all of us want you to have, even if the building is somewhat shorter, but it gets built. This is important to pass tonight.
Mr. Kalos is going to add. Thank you, Ethel.
So,
This is, right now, we're in business session.
So I just wanted to clarify some of the record and how folks might be feeling. Councilmember Van Kalos, if you didn't know, even though the name Kalos sounds Greek, it's actually Hungarian. I'm pretty observant Jew. I go to Orzaru on the east side. We're an egalitarian congregation, very small, have very similar challenges to you. It feels like from what I've been hearing, it feels like folks feel like they're being unfairly targeted. I want to just make sure, if you haven't seen the handout, this is an issue we've been working on since 2014, as soon as I first got elected. To be fair and honest, I actually spoke to a lot of the developers. Pretty much everyone in the development community has known that I'm coming to do this avoids text amendment. Before the plan was announced, and Charlie Bagley covered it in December 2017, we were already working on closing it. And you can see here, June 2017, I can give you a copy of the letter, it's on our website. We followed up in October. We were meeting with city planning to fix it before we knew about what was happening at Habonim. And the mayor announced it, and to be frank and honest, when we were talking about the mayor's announcement, which was at my East Side Town Hall, again, this was not something that was in the conversation. Ultimately, as folks have mentioned, there's a building that did give rise to it. It was covered in Gotham. It's the other building on here, which is the Barbell building or Vignoli building. That's actually what inspired it, because it's just so abusive. It's a 23-story building that is 500 and something feet tall. So I don't want you to feel like you're in any way targeted. It is just a situation where the developers saw this coming down the pike. There are 7 to 10 buildings that are in very similar situation to you. And the other key thing that's important is the way the government and private sector work is there will always be a tension between innovation and regulation. And when somebody is doing something that the government and the people don't like, we're going to act. And just in terms of, I know somebody was objecting to the rules changing midstream. They change midstream every day. There are gun companies that are pumping out as many guns as they can before we can regulate them. And when we say you can't have bump stocks anymore, people lose a lot of money, but it's the right thing to do. And I'm not comparing one or the other. I'm just saying that government has a long history of acting in the private market and causing businesses to lose a lot of money, but those businesses know the risks that they're taking.
I just want to reiterate, we had a very long meeting at land use. Everybody was welcome to come. So I know Paige is going to ask that people keep their comments to as brief as possible so we can get, and a lot of work was done ahead of time. Richard created a spreadsheet that showed what was proposed and what some of the other boards were considering.
No, actually, Sheena created the spreadsheet.
I support the amendment.
I have a question that Ethel started. and I want to make sure that I understand what the situation is with Habuni. Signed an agreement, sold the air rights in the synagogue, and have the right to occupy a certain amount of space. And my question is, do you have a right to occupy that space, no matter what the ultimate size, height of the building is? So I'm a little at a loss to understand what the issue is. If you have a binding agreement with the developer for that space, it seems to me the only thing that would prevent that occupancy is if nothing is built there, and I agree that that's highly unlikely. So unless I'm wrong, correct me, but it seems to me you have an absolute right, and I suspect a binding legal agreement. That's my question, and I have a quick comment for Paige about the resolution. I assume this is the time to. So what jumps out at me, reading through the all of the sections page, is that scattered throughout are comments about how the proposed city planning resolution doesn't restrict height. And while it's complex and as is the zoning resolution, ultimately it seems to me that that their resolution falls far short of what the ultimate objection is. So a simple thing, the resolution provides that our community board approves the text amendment subject to the comments and recommendations. I would urge you to change that to disapprove the text amendment unless these conditions are met. I would offer it as a friendly amendment. No. It's up to the chair.
The thing is, the way that this legislation has come about, there's 3 days between now and when the comments need to be filed on the 8th. So the problem is, we know that they're going to work on it. This is a working session. We had members of the Department of City Planning there. They've heard all these comments. They've heard them from every community board in Manhattan virtually. So the reason why we wrote it this way is we want to support them in doing a void resolution, but we are calling attention in our particular situation with what we see are, I think there are 6 more super talls in planning for our district, is to make sure that they close all the loopholes relating to this void loophole. So it is it's a nudge. We want to approve the voids amendment, but we are telling them it needs work, and these are the items that need to be done. What we're asking for tonight is for that resolution that says we support the voids, and if you don't want to vote for that, fair enough. I'm urging you to do that because city planning is expecting these comments to be able to take it to the next step so they can polish and refine their work. Now, there is another amendment coming behind this that Richard has written, which is far more restrictive at the state level. So I'm talking too much, but I want to make sure that everybody understands the criteria here and the importance of constructive criticism in our approval to guide them on what they should be focusing their next efforts. Does that help you?
I understand what you're saying, but I disagree.
Fine. Can I ask if you attended the community board land use meeting and your comments were already included, please wait and just say you're going to do yes or no and keep this moving because we'll be here very late if we don't move on.
I went to Habanero summer camp and my in-laws both went there, and I support the resolution as written, and I think the work was tremendous. I'll say I would not have met my husband if my parents hadn't, my in-laws hadn't gone there, because they met my father's first cousin there. That's why we're introduced.
Thank you.
I support the resolution.
Just full disclosure, I was not bar mitzvahed company. I just want to address a couple of comments. the issue of ex post facto, that is changing the rules in midstream. There is a city rule about when a building is grandfathered and can't be changed. And as I understand the rule, it is if you get a permit to build a foundation, which discloses a particular structure, and you build it, then you're grandfathered. In this case, the developer got a foundation permit, but only for a 25-story building. So they would not be grandfathered. And it was only later that they acquired additional property, and they have not yet gotten a building permit to build their building. I just touch quickly on Habonim. It's been 5 years since Habonim left the building. If this resolution or some other resolution passes, it is possible that the construction of the building will be delayed 6 months, but no more than that. Every developer has an incentive to build as quickly as possible. If the green rules change, the developer can design around it. It won't affect the space that Habonim has. And I looked on Habonim's website. They have a nursery school, they have an adult care, they have a Hebrew school, they have a thriving congregation. They received, as I read this, I don't know if it's true, but they received $45 million for selling their property to this developer. So while there may be a slight delay in the building of this building, A, it's the developer's fault, and B, it's something that I think we can ask the congregation to live with for another 6 months. Just to respond to Jay. Jay, I'm very much on the fence on this. I voted, I drafted it so that we approve because I think we want to give city planning a go-ahead. But I understand your point. It is a very inadequate resolution, but it's probably better than the other.
Just a quick question. If the void were reduced in the way that we want, how many stories would the building we're talking about on 66th Street be, or how many feet?
Well, that void is 161 feet, and I think our resolution calls for 20 feet, so it would drop to 141 feet.
But it wouldn't lose any square footage, right?
No, it wouldn't lose any square footage,
same
but the
square
building
footage,
drops down.
Same number of
apartments.
So how many stories?
We don't know because the floor to ceiling heights are manipulated in this structure as well.
So we don't need to lose the void.
Keep going.
Yes. Lose the void, no square footage.
We're gonna keep going.
That's the next.
Jennifer has the
Hey, Paige, sorry, so I do have a couple questions on this, and I apologize in advance, I've not had time to review this.
Go for it.
City proposal, but as number 2 relates to number 1, I'm just a bit unclear on the moratorium part of.
Well, that's a separate one, and that
It might be separate.
I made a mistake. It's not the state. This is a moratorium aimed at the New York City Council to hold all super tall permits reviewed until such time as all the regulations can be reviewed. Everything about a super tall.
Got it. Just to clarify though, number 1 is predicated on number 2.
No, they're two separate actions. The first one is the most important. That's the response to the Department of City Planning, which is due on the evening, on midnight on the 7th, for a hearing on the 15th for city planning. The moratorium is the brainchild of Community Board 7, Richard and a bunch of others who believe that the moratoria is not open use, and this is the time to deploy that safety valve to stop super tall while the city can look at all these impacts.
And by the way, if the city
does change the text, however they change it. Our moratorium resolution says that the moratorium dissolves. So whenever it's addressed, it dissolves. It may not be addressed to our satisfaction.
So just to build on top of that, and I know I'm going forward here, you mentioned in here the moratorium should last for either 2 years or subject to renewal and subject to an application to the Board of Standards and Appeals. Is that the standard time frame, 2 years?
We'd like to keep that.
Just a clarification for those who may be confused. For those who are maybe confused about the square footage issue, 161 square feet high, but if it's only one floor, it only has that amount of square feet, that one floor, whether it's a 2-foot floor or a 161-foot floor, the square footage for that floor is the same.
Yes,
Okay?
but remember, mechanical space is exempt from
It's
FAR.
exempt,
So
so it's zero.
it's zero.
Either way, it's zero.
It is.
Okay. Number two, this vote is really supporting the text amendment that's going to pass the city, that's going to pass city planning. Okay, what we did is we went ahead and said, we know this is going to pass, so we're going to support it because it's something the city planning came up with. But there's so many other things that were needed and should be done. And we tried to outline them. We painstakingly did it with compromise to make this the best possible text amendment if it was modified that we could come up with at that time. Nothing's perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple of things. Rich, this is not retroactive. The only way that a zoning regulation could be retroactive is it specifically says so.
Sorry.
Okay, but it is not retroactive. The other thing is that this is very narrowly tailored to deal with the most egregious issue that we are seeing now, which are the voids. There are a lot of problems with the zoning of the city and what is permitted, but those are different issues that can be taken up by rezoning certain districts, by trying to get rid of zoning lot mergers, which are mentioned here, which are the second biggest problem that we have. But this deals very narrowly, but very specifically with the voids. And what we're trying to do is to tailor it and make it even more specific.
I think 250 feet is tall enough for a building. And that was the original agreement, stick to it. And now send a message to the next developer that wants to build a 2 tall building.
I support the amendments and rather the resolution, and I'm grateful for all the hard work.
Quickly, there is one grammar, I attribute this to our scribe, Lisa. On the third paragraph, our community board land use committee starts off. I want you to know I pay attention to the details, right? Architects, God is in the details. On the second sentence, it should say, we're adding 2 words, buildings that have proposed heights, just so it reads a little better. So that's my own friendly amendment. So may I call the question? All those in favor?
And 3 new members.
38. No?
All those opposed?
No?
All those abstaining? One no.
It's 38010.
Brilliant. We're gonna take an intermission. We're now gonna have a friendly intermission. Somebody opposed. 8-0-0.
I'm going to ask Deputy Inspector Mallon to say a few words, and then we'll go back to business as usual.
I want to make much of these private topics. Sometimes it's really refreshing to go to a meeting and not have the police be the most controversial topic. It's good. I have with me my NCO, Detective Charlie. This is Officer Groger. They're build block meetings next week. We have a building block meeting on the 13th at 7 o'clock. It's going to be at Brandeis High School. It's all for residents that live in our sector. Our sector is 79th Street, 86th Street, Central Park West, and West Side Highway. Yeah, note the body camera. This is our second month of having body cameras. Already the first week, there was a kidnapping, a home invasion robbery that ended up in a foot pursuit in this day news, and the officer's body camera captured the perpetrator dumping evidence into a trash can, which the ADA found extremely helpful. Our compliance, our internal compliance with the body camera when they're supposed to be recording is over 95%. Our goal is 100%. It's still new, but that is very, very well. And most importantly, the cops like them. They're turning them on when they're supposed to turn them on. The supervisors review the footage. We're high on them. NCOs, there's been some slight turnover. Currently, our website, our homepage is out of date. That will be fixed in the next 2 weeks. Crime. This is the best news I have. So for the year, we are down, compared to last year, 43.3% in crime and 46.3% in the 28-day. Of the 77, there's a lot of things that go into the crime rate. It's not just us. It's us, the ADAs, parole, probation, corrections, who's in, who's out. The weather affects crime. On a cold, snowy week, it suppresses a certain percentage of my crimes. That said, of the 77 New York City police precincts, the largest crime decline year to date is in the 2-0. Enjoy it while it lasts. I don't know how long it will. And the 2-4, for those that live just north of us, you have a similar trend. The 2-4 has the 5th largest crime decline year to date in the city. So just now, January 1st through March 3rd, crime in the Upper West Side, I don't know why, but it's down a lot, and all our patterns are. We have our patterns in January and February. We had a car break pattern. We never caught the guy. I don't know if he's still out there, if he's arrested by another precinct, but we haven't had a hit on that in about 3 weeks. We had a smash and grab burglary pattern. Guy was throwing rocks through the windows of restaurants and bars. Haven't had a hit on that in a month. Again, we never caught the guy, so he might still be out there. We have had some tremendous arrests. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Really quick, I spoke about the crime decline at my community council meeting, and the West Side Rag wrote a very, very nice article on it. But I had an ask after reading that. I read the West Side Rag religiously, and I read the comments because I learn more about, I know, but I actually learn more about the neighborhood because there's people that post who post comments on the West Side Rag who have lived in the Upper West Side for 50 years. And here's the thing, is that when the crime decline story ran, there were a lot of comments about terrible experiences going into the 2-4 and the 2-0, about going in to make reports. And I read some of the testimonials, and some of them I kind of dismissed because they were like, hey, I went in to report my car got hit by another car when it's parked and there's $1,200 worth of damage and the police didn't investigate. We don't do that unless there's an injury. We don't do that. But reading the testimonials, there were some that were absolute truth, that people came into my precinct and had terrible experiences trying to report a crime. So my ask is simply this: if you've heard me speak in my community council meetings, my number one pet peeve is customer service. And I have a great crew. I have phenomenal cops. 2 of my best are standing right next to me. But in any large bureaucratic organization, particularly like we have 130 police officers, there's going to be the occasional failure. The goal is 0 failures, but I don't know if we're going to get there. My ask is simply this. We had a customer service failure last week where someone went to report a very simple report. It was busy, and we didn't take care of them the way we should have. That can't happen. If you become aware of a customer service failure, and I'm not talking about someone came in and there was a long line and they had to wait. I'm talking someone's trying to file a report, and for some reason they hit the wrong person, or the police officer has difficulty articulating our policies and they leave with a bad taste in their mouth. If you're a member of the community board, I think the best thing you can do, if you want to let Penny know, Penny can contact me at any time, or if you want to contact me direct, that's fine too. A number of people here do so already when they have issues that they want dealt with. I encourage that because, like I said before, customer service is still sometimes in civil service organizations, it's our weak point. And if there's one thing when I meet the 2.0 eventually, I'd like to have people come in and have a better experience than they do. No, not that soon, don't worry. So that's the mechanism. If you it's my ask. You're not bothering us. You're helping us, and you're helping all of us. If you become aware of customer service failures, Penny, she knows how to get a hold of me, even Roberta, or if you want to contact me direct, please do, because I do want to get this fixed. You guys got anything?
Hi guys, my name is Officer Gene. I'm the neighborhood coordination officer. We come from West 79 and West 86. We'll be conducting our build-up block meeting next week on the 13th at 6:30 at 145 West 84th Street at Brandeis High School. So please come. If you have any concerns or questions regarding, I'm sorry, at 7 p.m. If you have any questions regarding policing or the safety or anything in that regards or that nature, please, you guys are our eyes and ears of the community. Please inform us, and then we can work together to make the community a lot safer.
If you can't make it, so what we're doing here, as far as I know, we're the only precinct doing it right now. The last 2 build mock meetings since January, we stream them live on Facebook. We advertise it on Twitter, so if you can't make it, if you want to get takeout food, sit on your couch at home, relax, and watch a build block meeting, and even send in a question, you can watch and live stream. And they're going to be doing the same thing.
There's a whole flyer out on the table outside if you want to grab one on the way out.
Thank you. Everybody has a good night.
Okay, ready for galvanized for land use part 2? This is the item 2 on your agenda is the moratorium on 2 tall buildings, and this is targeting the, we'll go to the city council to support them in their initiatives to review all the different loopholes. And as was asked by Jennifer, this is one that's targeted to stop the super cults until we can really get our arms around all the technical issues that Ethel mentioned, et cetera. I think this one is fairly straightforward, unless there are questions. I don't have any comments from the public, so,
would this stop the building synagogue building?
If it were to pass, it would stop it until either one of 2 things happen. The developer could apply for a special permit, and the thought there is if the developer modifies his building in a way that takes into account the, not 25 stories, but makes a decent effort to modify the building, they go to BSA, they get a special permit, they build the building. The other terminus would be when city planning passes the text amendment and it's approved by the city council. Would probably, my guess is, like 4 or 5 months. That is what the resolution says. Quicker?
because this is everyone, it is not.
Yeah. In any event,
Let's not go back.
If there is a resolution passed by city planning and it becomes law, the moratorium is off.
Assuming it goes in the plan.
I'm just wondering, given the serious lack of affordable housing, if we want to include some kind of exemption for a building that includes like deeply affordable housing?
There are already exemptions, there's already rules on what businesses
Well, it doesn't seem clear in this that would, like, this, to me, feels really broad, so.
Yeah,
Like.
Well, it's intended to be broad because
Oh,
we don't
yeah.
know, and we are asking every time we have a meeting with any of the officials, Helen knows this, Ben, I think he was here gone. Helen's still here, yes. Every time this comes up, we ask about housing. And the problem is you can't jack up a building 700 feet and then somehow slip in affordable housing. The economy isn't there because you need to have somebody pay, what is the last apartment that went up? 238 million on top of the Neiman building for a penthouse. I mean, it's astronomical. So we're biting it off one bit at a time, one fight at a time, with a lot of rhetoric and a lot of expertise. And can I say that CB7 is considering retaining George James to not look at just shadows. Can I do that? Oh, it's not. I'm sorry, I spoiled the surprise. Till next time. Because again, Roberta will have the news. Are we?
But what you can say is that other community boards in Manhattan have already passed the moratorium.
Oh, yes, and other community boards have passed other moratoriums. So, Andrew,
Yeah,
do you need the mic?
I don't think so. So I'm still not clear both on the last resolution on this, what's been brought up. How do these resolutions impact the inclusionary housing, or in the case of even super tall, if someone wanted to get the extra height but use the void for affordable housing, would this?
You can't have a void for housing. It's either a mechanical void.
Inclusionary housing is a whole.
Yeah.
Inclusionary housing is something totally different. Void, it just doesn't have a
But
source.
this isn't about void, this also includes zoning lot mergers.
Yeah.
We put everything in it because.
That's what I'm saying, so it feels like it would also prohibit affordable housing.
No, it doesn't prohibit.
They're separate issues entirely.
Yeah, they are gross.
So the reality with affordable housing, it usually comes up for 421A exactly. If I'm a developer and I want to have 421A, it's going through APD, you can raise the FAR by two or three stories. That's different than adding 200 feet or the equivalent of 20 stories in the middle of the building. But that's what he did. And he said, well,
that's what, and this is not a debate, so. No, so. Anyone
If the property includes 20% affordable housing, and there is a bulking up, that law exists. I don't believe that this overrides it.
Roberta?
I have a question. I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure. This doesn't prevent any development from happening. It just says that they can, if they are going to have a void, they have to count that FAR in your calculation. Is that correct?
This resolution.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, there are two right here, Roberta. She's first.
Can we call the question?
No, okay, just a comment.
I don't like how this is framed because I don't have strong preferences on height. So I understand the abuses of voids and ceiling heights. I agree that the third point on zoning lot mergers could restrict buildings that are not necessarily abusing the zoning resolution. So.
Okay, explain it. So
It's where they're being abused, not where they're, for example, the two.
Overly broad.
Well, it is overly broad because we wanted to, the problem is, if I can explain the resolution a little bit. The genesis of this resolution was that it would be generic enough that all 12 Manhattan community boards could consider it. So if we got into the weeds for what was good or bad for CB7, it may not work for some of the other boards.
You hear that?
I just want to make one last comment. I am totally against voids and abuses. I just think it's wrong to change the rules. I've already made this point in midstream when people have already made decisions made investments, sold their synagogue, whatever they've done based upon the current law, to pull the rug out from under them is just wrong.
We're not gonna call the question.
Call the question. All those in favor?
Thirty-one?
Against?
Nice and high. Two?
Abstaining?
6?
For cause?
There's no, 31-2-6.
That may be your last.
All right, now the last one is very simple. It's one of your favorite land use topics, physical culture establishments. And this one is easy, it's on 100 West 72nd, it's in the subcellar. They passed muster, they got all their information in. Is the applicant present? Oh, this makes it so much easier. Third time for asking for a vote. All in favor?
$39.
Against? Saying none? Abstain? Seeing none. Thank you all.
Thank you.
39-0.
Thank you, ladies, people, so much.
Okay, number 4. It's a new application for licenses. There was no position from the community in any of these establishments, and we voted to approve. Any questions? Okay, well, the question, all those in favor?
Liz, is that up? 39.
Against? Abstaining? Uneligible? Okay. So, number 5. 161 West 72nd Street is also a new application for liquor license. The reason it's separate is because this is one of those cases where you would like to say we want to approve something but with some conditions. But for liquor license, we have to disapprove them unless they include the condition. And that's what will happen with Ms. Nunn, yeah. So in this case, we disapprove it unless unless the back terrace floor plan was submitted to the CB7 office, which it was, and the following stipulations are included in the method of operation, which was no music allowed on the back terrace, and that the back terrace was to close daily at 10 p.m. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody against?
39, I'm sorry.
Anybody against? Abstaining? Not eligible to vote, so the vote passes. So, number 6 is 239 West 105th Street. There was another liquor license application. In this case, the applicant did not show up, so we disapprove the application.
Is this the first time they didn't show up?
It's the first time that they didn't show up, yes. Anybody against? Abstaining? Are we eligible to vote? Okay. Yes, moving along, number 7 is renewal of the on closed cycle cafes. Again, there was no opposition by the community on any of these venues, and we voted to approve them. All those in favor? Anybody against? Abstaining? Not eligible to vote. Okay. So, number 8 is enclosed sidewalk cafe renewal. Once again, there was no opposition from the community, and we voted to approve. All those in favor? Against?
Amy, I'm adding my.
Okay, 6, 31, 6,
Abstaining?
1. 31, 6, 1.
Okay, number 9. A new unenclosed sidewalk cafe. Once more, there was no opposition from the community, and we voted to approve.
Is this a new owner of an old location?
Yes.
It almost
Yes,
is
it
the
is.
same footprint entirely,
Yes,
but it's new owner, so it's a new application.
All those in favor?
I think we could see.
38?
Against? Abstaining? Not eligible to vote? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, BCI. Now we have budget and strategy. I'm turning this over to Cindy, but before I do, I just want to say that Cindy's been doing an awesome job. She has been reading through documents like you couldn't believe. And we have, you all got the online version. We couldn't print it out because we would have had to destroy, I think, 5 or 6 floors in the middle of it.
Okay, so I hope everyone has gotten a chance to look at the cover letter and spreadsheets that Penny emailed. We have been trying to make this a very transparent and inclusive process. We asked all committees to give us their comment on the agency's comments, and Roberta and Mark, Penny, and I sat and reviewed everybody's responses, made sure that they made sense, and then Mark transposed them onto the spreadsheet. We drafted a cover letter reiterating our priorities, and that is what's before you. If that's approved, it will be submitted as soon as possible. I just wanted to note that this is the end of one process, but the beginning of another. And I wanted to remind everyone that we're going to ask you for bulleted responses to the template that was emailed, so we can begin the 2021 process. So that's it. I hope everybody got a chance.
All the questions.
All those in favor?
$37.
Opposed?
3700.
And during my chair's report, I did not mention that we're losing a very special member because I was asked to wait until this part of the meeting. Nikki has been on the board for a long time. She has served in many capacities, including vice chair at one point. She's helped with our amazing pop-up parties. And I'm going to turn it over to the preservation people, but I wanted to offer my own personal thank you. Oh, sorry about that, transportation. I almost left you out.
How would you want me to do this?
Fine, it's really minor. Go ahead.
This is really minor. Thank you, Howard. It's a car service, renewal for the for-hire base station. The car service is called the Special Radio Dispatch Corps. This is a renewal. There were virtually no community complaints since the last renewal. We voted in favor of renewing it. Are there any questions or comments? Any other vote? All those in favor? Everybody raise again, please. It's so hard to see.
People, if you're voting yes, raise your hand. And Richard, are you voting?
Where am I voting?
Trust me. 35. Hands down, all those opposed. And all those abstaining, reducing cost. 3500. Thank you.
Thank you, Transportation Committee. And now finally we move back to preservation.
Thank you. We have two resolutions for you tonight. And I'm sorry to say, again, no backyards or rooftop additions. We have windows and more windows. So if we can go to 262 Central Park West, sometimes known as the White House, where Irene Cara got out of the cab when pretending to live there during the original Thing movie, the real Thing movie. So there is a picture of the building. And to cut to the chase, the issue before you is 6/6 versus 1/1. Can you go to the next slide? There is the picture of, there are a total of 18 windows that are in front of you there, but only 10 of them are actually before you for a vote because the staff approved the rest of them. These are the ones that face Central Park and Central Park West. And like a situation, well, unlike the situation last month, this building does not have a master plan. So we're going to see applications one by one for these, but similar to last month, there are no original windows left on either of the primary facades of this building. Actually, I'm sorry, not either, but any of the primary facades. There are actually 3 primary facades because this building occupies a full block along Central Park West and then on the side streets on 85th and 86th and 87th streets. Can we go to the next slide, please? This shows you a couple of things that are useful. What they're proposing are 1/1 double hung windows, but their dimensions are a little bit closer to the original than the existing replacement windows. These are windows that were replaced sometime in the 1980s. And essentially, could we go to the next slide? Thank you, and that's the same point again, and then one more. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to point out to you here is that the way that the windows fit into the window opening includes a piece of wood. As you see, it has a decorative detail. Now, if you take a look over here, the purpose of this photograph is to show you that the wood is completely deteriorated. But what it also shows you is that the replacement windows that were put in the 1980s, instead of emulating this very elegant curve of the molding, had basically a flat panel. The proposal before you today is to have the extruded aluminum follow the detail of this brick mold as it was originally formulated. It is a bit of a compromise because obviously it would be better if they just replaced the whole brick mold. But the problem is that this is not a master plan. And so we are again facing the concern of if we insist on the original window configuration of 6/6 and replacing the brick molds, then we will end up with many generations of windows that look inconsistent. And to start off, this window, if you go back to the first slide, this window is on the 4th floor, which essentially, if you take a look, is just exactly above the main entrance of this building on Central Park West. And so it'll have a lasting impact on the visual appeal of this contributing building to our landmark district for a long time to come. So for those reasons, to avoid the hodgepodge, and because they are doing a better job of the detail with the aluminum windows, our committee voted in favor. Are there any questions? Your call for question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Abstaining? Ineligible. Thank you. I'm going to interrupt for 1 second to follow up on what the chair offered, which was a moment to be grateful to Nikki Fiegel for her presence on our presentation committee. Well, all three of those committees, right. We have a small presentation for Nikki. One of the great joys of being on the preservation committee is you get to peek in other people's apartments and see how the other half lives. Well, maybe some.
So what are you giving her? Tell us.
No, we're giving her a book written by a local architect called Interior Landmarks, Treasures of New York, written by, among others, Kate Wood from Landmark West. So it's all in the family, and it came from local business, so we're supporting local business. So congratulations and thank you. Preservation Committee.
I'm the former co-chair of communications, but.
Only for.
Hey, you're not, no, who's okay, there we go. Oh my God, what a good looking group. One more time.
Well preserved.
Oh God. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
As you can see, the Preservation Committee is viewed around the grave. Can I just say, as a new member of the Preservation Committee, it's a lot of fun. There are often snacks. It's not just about windows. Please consider coming out on the 2nd Thursday. Please.
Actually, I want to say something to new board members. Preservation is one of the most interesting committees in my estimation, because you're really helping to preserve the built fabric of our Upper West Side. It is so important, especially when you think about how many new buildings are coming and how they disrupt the beautiful streetscapes that we have. It's really, really important that you think about how your neighbors look, how they interact with another one. All the people in brownstones, they're the most amazing people. They care so much about their blocks and about their neighbors. You really should at least come to a meeting or two and see if you might want to join them, because it's really fun and it's really interesting. And yes, it's very picky, but it's a good thing.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Just really quickly, Nikki, I was gonna thank you because I learned a lot from you when I first joined the board, and then when I became chair, you were a real source of counsel, and we'll miss you. So thank you very much.
One other point, you may not know, some bylaws require
Or you, after you leave?
You real fast.
Okay.
I was given a very quick one, Nikki. Nikki came to this board straight out of the biggest fight we ever had, which was reserved the upper West Side. She was the president of the West Side Responsible Development and worked together with the board, then came onto the board. She said, was a fountain of knowledge, of insight, of understanding of our neighborhood, and added tremendous quality and value to everything she did. And we are going to miss you, but we'll see you.
Okay, thank you. Now back to business. We have 327 Central Park West. This is reconfiguring the windows on a penthouse. If you go to the next slide, please, what you'll see is that there is the current is on the left and the proposed is on the right. If you go to the next slide. Here's which will be a close-up, I hope. Whoops, I'm sorry, no, that's, there are two different facades of this again, current on one side. So here we go. Here are the windows that are existing on the left and proposed on the right. And if you take a look at the bottom left, right-hand corner, what you'll see is the one area where there might be a little bit of controversy, which is that if you see those two windows, they now are flush with the corner. I'm sorry, I'm on your way. They're now flush with the corner. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that there's, again, flush with the corner. So in effect, what you have is windows facing south that wrap around. Now, if you go to the next slide, there's the one about the visibility. Okay, now this is the long view. The thing I want to tell you about this view is that the windows along the length of the existing facade have nothing to do with the windows below. The building below has a very substantial cornice that draws a line between the main building and the penthouse. There is actually a very nice small decorative cornice on top, which again emphasizes the difference between the original and the penthouse fabric of the building. Is there one more? No. No, okay. I didn't include it, but take my word for it. These windows are actually minimally visible from the street. Not right in front of the building, but from down the street one way and down the street for the other. Because the windows, as originally proposed, were not intended to be relating to the windows below, the majority of our committee viewed this as an acceptable and appropriate way to reconfigure. Do you want to speak to this? There were concerns about those wraparound windows, and the minutes that were published will be amended to reflect that. So Susan, why don't you take that?
It's a minor thing of sorts. The building was built in 1928, neo-Renaissance style. It's very proper. It's appeal and look. And the presentation showed very clearly examples of what are called international style windows that wrap around. And the presentation by the architect showed many examples in the district where there are international style windows that wrap around. And I was concerned and did not vote to approve this because I thought it was inappropriate to put that type of international style window on the top of this building that's a neo-Renaissance building. The thing that was not discussed at the meeting that I was really concerned about was that this entire expanse of glass along the southern face of the penthouse will probably reflect light very dramatically at the neighbors. And there was nobody there from the neighborhood to talk about this. I don't know why, but I just felt I couldn't vote for it. In the meeting minutes, it says that, which Nikki wrote, it's your dealer, but in the meeting minutes, it says that the concern was that the windows don't align with the windows below. That's not my concern. My concern is that the style is inappropriate for this building.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I think we're going to call the question. All those in favor?
$33. Opposed? Oh, I'm sorry, 34. Opposed? 3. Abstaining? 34,300.
No.
Okay, this is an art exhibit, the annual art exhibit on the Broadway malls. This is the 12th annual art exhibition. Usually the the artworks are, I'd say, amusing and whimsical. This year, I think they're amusing and educational. Or no, I was whimsical and educational. Drop the amusing. It's, as you can see, we have a visual here. It's going to be birds, and the artist is named Nicholas Holliver, and the birds are going to be average about 11 to 12 feet. They're made out of wood, which the artist has reclaimed in New York City. And every single one of the birds either migrates through New York City or resides here. And usually not in a super tall building. And, but they might. And they also, most importantly, they're all threatened by climate change. And each one of these sculptures is going to have informational text, and it's going to direct people to the website where they can learn more. And at the end, I'll give you the website. Jerry, if you want to, that shows where they're going to be. There are 12 of them in total and 6 in CB7. If you want, I can give you exactly where they're going to be. But the Broadway Mall is 105th, 96, 86, 79, 72nd, 64th. Thank you. I'm not going to give you the birds. But, one is a cormorant. The one on the top with the big wingspan is a cormorant. And what else? There's the cormorant, double crested. And that gives you a sense of the scale. So let me give you the website for those who go to https:/audubonsculptureproject.com. audubonsculptureproject.com. Call the question.
Again?
34,000.
Yes, I just want to add something to every time it's mentioned. When the hospitals are mentioned in the resolution for Health and Human Services, add Mount Sinai, that's Mount Sinai East, add New York Presbyterian, and add Montefiore Hospital. This applies to all. The nursing-patient ratio is extremely important. It has, by research in reputable medical magazines and journals, substantiated that the too high ratios can have negative impact on patient outcomes, and 4 of those are outlined in our resolution. Really what we want to do is to stop an impending strike. If there's a nurses' strike affecting those 5 hospitals, it's going to be terrible, especially for our community. Second, we want to have the parties, the hospitals and the nurses' union and associate unions go ahead and really negotiate and be part of that negotiation that has not been established clearly in the previous guidelines is the proper nurse-patient ratio. And we have some of the statistics from the research. We heard many situations like where 1 to 3 in emergency room is appropriate and where it's 1 to 7. We have reports of 1 to 13 and 1 to 20 at times, but we don't want to go by, although it was believable, hearsay. We spoke to the community affairs at Mount Sinai hospitals. They could not make a meeting. They did not provide us with their position because there were negotiations. But I think that the 2 things, one, that we implore them to avoid the strike, and that we insist that they urge them to establish appropriate ratios that would have positive health outcomes. Thank you.
This did not need to come to the full board, but I felt it was important because if the letter goes out to the committee, everyone doesn't care about it, so that is why you're hearing about it tonight. So let's call the question. Oh, wait.
And I will raise my hand on scar. I broke my elbow last year ago and was at Mount Sinai St. Luke's from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. and had to go to Lennoxville to get to work done in February. Is this because this seems to me that it's ever since Mount Sinai has taken over St. Luke's and you said that you didn't have a problem?
No, it's
always been a problem.
It's been a problem. Call the question.
Is this resolution binding?
It's not a resolution, it's just that we're approving a letter. It's approving a letter urging them to.
34, anybody opposed?
Any opposed? Any abstaining or abstention? I want to thank everybody for coming. I wish Mickey to come back for business from time to time, and thank everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
Accepted. All those in favor?